Okay, good morning and welcome to this morning's meeting of Dmrc. The meeting will be held under the Council's hybrid protocols, so if members wish to speak and they are remote or officers are remote, please raise your electronic hand. Members and officers in the chamber will raise their actual hand. Okay, and as usual, this will be broadcast on the YouTube channel and it is being recorded. We'll start the agenda with number 1, which is apologies and substitutes.
Yes, Convener, we have apologies from Councillors Nicholl and Fairweather.
Thank you. And declarations of interest, statements of transparency.
I have declarations. I am not taking part in the Chapelton farm application because I have spoke to the constituents about the application. I will leave at that point. Yeah, fine, Councillor Durrell. You'll have to leave the meeting at that point, and then you will let you back in after we've dealt with item 5. Right, okay. Thank you.
Or yes, you're going. Yes, you will let you in after because you'll miss item 5. That's grand. Thank you.
Councillor Durrell, could just look out for a message from me when to come back in. That would...
Yes, you'll get a message from Mrs. Forsyth to let you when you can come back in. Okay. So just look out for that, okay? Okay, minutes of the previous meeting. We've got minutes from the 27th of September and the 27th of November. Are these correct minutes? Yep, okay, thank you for that. Okay, we'll move on to item 4, which is 13 Tayside Street, Carnoustie. Now, there's a piece of information I need to make you aware of before we start. And that is some new information which was introduced by the applicant, and our legal advisor, Ms Magson, will give us an outline of what that is and what action, if any, we need to take before we proceed.
Thank you very much, Convener. Yes, members, I can just direct you to the first report, section 4, which is highlighted as new information. The plan and review statement submitted by the applicant includes matters which were not raised in the first instance to the planning authority when the application was submitted. And as it states in the report, section 43B of the Town and Country Planning Scotland Act 1997 covers procedure in relation to this. And it states that in a review under 43A8, a party to the proceedings is not to raise any matter which was not before the appointed person at the time the determination reviewed was made, unless that party can demonstrate A, that the matter could not have been raised before that time, or B, that its not being raised before that time was a consequence of exceptional circumstances. Those are the only 2 grounds upon which new information can be brought into the process at this stage, and that's for members to determine. Accordingly, the applicant may not raise new matters unless you consider this section, and the reasons for raising the new matters are in the notice of review application. Now, if members would like a moment to refresh their memory of that within the notice of review, then I think that would be something that would be a good use of time, and then we can deal with this as a preliminary matter.
Members, do you want to adjourn for maybe 5 minutes just to consider this item, to consider this, if you like, in private? Okay, we're happy to do that. So, yeah, if we can maybe stop the live stream and maybe ask any visitors in the chamber just to leave for 5 minutes. And we'll call you back in when we're ready to go. Right, Tim, we've had a short delay to discuss this issue in private, and before we go ahead with the rest of the meeting and Mr Christensen's presentation, we need to agree whether we should consider additional information brought forward by the applicant, which was essentially mentioning other flues in the vicinity, which wasn't in the original submission and could very easily have been presented originally. There's no exceptional circumstances why that could not have been done. And I think the proposal is we ignore the second submission from the applicant. We ignore that information. We've obviously done a site visit this week earlier and had an opportunity to hear the views of our environmental health colleague. But my proposal is that we just ignore this additional information if members are happy with that.
Yes, Convener, it's just to confirm that in terms of the test, the legal test, that you're suggesting that the matter could have been brought before this time and that it's not the consequence of an exceptional circumstance, and that's what you're putting forward as your motion.
That's correct. So what I'm saying is there are no exceptional circumstances. The applicant could have brought this forward in his original appeal and didn't, and brought it in later. And that's contrary to the rules, I think, is essentially we're saying, the Act. So are we happy with that? We'll ignore the further submission from the applicant. Okay?
Agree with that.
Okay, we've taken that decision. Sorry for the delay, Mr Christensen. If we can get you again just to give the presentation from your perspective, and then we can get on with matters. Okay?
Thank you, Convener. Just before I start, I noticed that Kerry Todd's waiting to come back into the meeting.
Okay, I think you're free to go ahead now.
Okay, let me know if you can see the slides.
Yeah, they're clear.
Good morning, members. I am Paul Christensen of the Development Plan team at Angus Council, present today as an independent planning advisor to the committee. I can confirm that I've had no previous involvement in the application and that I have no conflict of interest relative to the case, applicant, or any interested parties. The case in front of members of the Dmrc seeks review of refusal of an application for planning permission for the reciting of an existing unauthorised wood-burning stove flue located on the roof of an approved garden room to an alternative location on the roof further from the eastern boundary of the site. The flue proposed would be of a similar scale to an authorised flue currently located on the building. Members will be aware from the site visit this week of the location, but just to go over the location plan, the application site is marked in red in front of you on the slides. To the north of the site is Tayside Street, with immediately beyond that, the East Coast Rail Line. To the east of the red line area is property number 14 Tayside Street, and to the west, is 12 Tayside Street. To the south of the application site is the coastal footpath with Carnoustie waterfront and beach further beyond. A closer look at the site plan shows the application site in red, and the garden room is marked just where my cursor is now hovering over. We can see the existing flue position to the east on the roof of the eastern side of the garden room, and the proposed location further to the west of the proposed new flue. A detailed site plan submitted by the applicant shows the relative distances of the existing flue and of the proposed flue to the existing property at 13 Tayside Street, and also relative distances to 14 Tayside Street. It shows the proposed flue would be approximately 5 metres from the boundary between 13 and 14 Tayside Street, approximately 22 metres from the existing property at 13 Tayside Street, and a relative position of around 12.3 metres to the rear of the property at 14 Tayside Street. A floor plan of the summer house and garden room shows the new proposed flue in the bottom left-hand corner, the existing stove, and where the flue would be above that, in the middle on the right-hand side, just where my cursor is hovering over just now. The existing elevations shows, or the proposed elevations, sorry, shows the where the position of the proposed flue would be, and you can see marked in the dotted line the existing flue position. And you can see there is some difference in terms of its relative location on the roof. Again, viewpoints that members will be familiar with following the site visit on earlier in the week. You can see the garden room and summer house from this is a view looking from the coastal footpath looking north. You can clearly see the garden room, the existing unauthorised flue on the eastern boundary with property number 14. And just to point out to members that the new position of the flue would be roughly above the doors that are patio doors and access into the summer house or garden room. Again, view from the coastal footpath looking west. We can just see the summer house just in the distance here, and you can just make out the proposed flue. The south elevation from the coastal path, again, we can see the existing unauthorised flue on the eastern boundary, on the eastern side of the roof. This is the boundary, the fence is the boundary between 13 and 14 Tayside Street. And again, the proposal is to remove the existing flue and reposition it, and it would be just roughly to the top right hand side of the window at the rear of the garden room. And finally, this is a view sort of zoomed out a little bit, looking east. You can clearly see the garden room within the property of 13 Tayside Street. And again, the unauthorised flue visible in proximity to the property at number 14. And as is pointed out earlier, the flue would be removed and repositioned approximately just above the access of the patio doors from the garden room. That concludes the presentation, members. The case officer report, notice of review, grounds of appeal and other information is detailed in the papers in front of members this morning. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Christensen. Mr. Christensen from members. Councillor Brace.
Yes, thanks, convener. So, Mr. Christensen, in your professional opinion, shifting the flue isn't going to make a difference so significant that it will eliminate any problem to neighbours caused by smoke?
Councillor Brace, in terms of the planning opinion, I think it's mentioned in the report of handling that in terms of design, the flue, it will be exactly the same type of flue. There is no issue with that flue in terms of its design. I think the issues you're raising are probably more appropriate to be answered by environmental health. I think in relation to the emissions, maybe the environmental health representative would be able to answer that specific question. But in terms of a design aspect, I think that issue has been clarified in the report of handling. But in terms of the repositioning of it from a sort of an environmental health perspective, maybe more for the representative to mention. But it's clearly specified in the report that there would still remain concerns in relation to those matters. But you may wish to ask environmental health for more specific details on that.
Thanks, Mr. Christensen. I'm conscious we have got Mr. Petrie from Environmental Health on the call, and he was on the site visit earlier this week. Are there any other questions specifically for Mr. Christensen? Okay, I think probably, Councillor Braze, it might be worth pushing that question to Mr. Petrie and get his views on that, because that's his area of expertise.
If you could, please, Convener.
Okay, Mr. Petrie, if you could perhaps, did you hear the question that Councillor Braze posed to Mr. Christensen? If we could get your take on that issue.
Yep, I heard it. Thank you, Convener. Yes, no,
just hold on a minute. Hold on.
Sorry, Convener. It was just a gentle reminder to members that we can seek clarification about matters, but new information would be dealt with differently. So it's just to make everybody just put that back in people's minds. Yeah, just bear in mind that the discussion we had beforehand, that we shouldn't be introducing any new matters, but I guess you've been asked about moving the flue, and would that would that remove the objections from Environmental Health? I think that's really the question we're asking you.
Thank you, Convener. No, moving it that relatively short distance wouldn't really make much of a difference in our opinion. In terms of a low-level discharge of that type, we'd be looking for separation distance more towards 20 to 30 metres rather than just 5 metres, which wouldn't be practical and wouldn't be doable in this situation.
Okay, thank you. Does that satisfy you, Councillor Braze?
Yes, it does. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Petrie. Okay, do members now have enough information to determine the appeal? Yep. Okay, I think I'm getting nods of heads here. So yes, in the usual way, if members could perhaps give me their view, what their views are on the appeal. I'll maybe start in the chamber with Councillor Braze.
Yes, thanks, Convener. Well, my view is that we have to deal with what's in front of us, and while there might be other ways of dealing with the smoke from a wood-burning stove that would be suitable, that is not what's in front of us, and I would uphold the decision to refuse planning permission.
You're happy to refuse planning permission, yeah?
I wouldn't say I'm happy, but that's what I believe we have to do. That's the correct decision. Thanks.
Can I turn now to Councillor Doran?
Yeah, thank you. So as mentioned, we visited the site as part of a site visit, and were able to see the current flue in situ and look around the area. I agree with the officer's assessment relating to the original application, and I don't think moving the flue in this instance is sufficient. I know that it's mentioned in the original application that it would be occasional use, but what we're being asked to approve here is a permanent installation of a stove. So there is no kind of, we don't know how much it could be used. Once it's there, and it could be used every day if they do wish to do that. And I also noted that in some of the objections and letters of support for the application, it was mentioned around other flues, including ones on David Moyes Road that have been approved previously. And I had a look at those, and those are on a single story, but the flue line is in height or above the roof line on those properties. So I just went to check those out of interest. And so I agree with the original decision to refuse planning permission, given the information that we've been given to discuss in this application today.
Okay, thanks very much indeed. And Councillor Durno.
Thanks, Convener. On page 13 of our document, I'm referring to NP4 policy 20. Part D of the policy indicates that development proposals that are likely to have significant adverse effects on air quality will not be supported. I went to the site visit as well, and I think with the high winds and the general sighting of the flue. I don't think it really matters what position it would be in. I think the wind would still blow the smoke onto the neighbours, and I do think that neighbours need to enjoy their garden and etc. So unfortunately for the applicant, I think you'll need to find another heating source because I'm going with the original decision to refuse this application. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Durno. Yeah, okay, and I guess for me, we did a site visit on Tuesday, and that was an extremely valuable site visit, I think. Sometimes you see things on site that you perhaps can't see from papers and slides, no matter how well they are presented. So I thought an extremely valuable site visit. I would agree with my colleagues. I think moving the flue a few metres isn't really going to make any real difference. And I think the objections from environmental health are noted, and I would agree with them. In terms of, this is one of those particular applications that I think is quite close to a borderline, but there have been objections from neighbours, and the Environmental Health Service have been called in, and they have saying that according to their, if you like, policies and the council's policies, they're objecting, and I'm quite happy to take their view on that. I think the applicant will need to find, as Councillor Dorn has said, another solution to their heating problems, but this is not acceptable. So yes, I agree with my colleagues. We are rejecting the appeal. So just to clarify it, planning application 23/00171/full, we are rejecting the appeal for the
Convener, sorry, I was just going to ask for reasons.
For the reasons stated in the original submission from planning. Okay, we'll move on to the next item, and you'll be leaving us at this point, Councillor Durno. The next item is item 5, which is the schoolhouse at Chapelton, Broth. That's item 5. And we'll just wait until Councillor Durno has left us. Okay, so this one is over to Mr. Christensen again.
Councillor Durno, you'll actually have to leave the meeting. Thank you. She's just switched her camera off.
Okay. Has she left? Okay, right. Councillor Durno has now left the meeting. So, okay, over to Mr. Christensen again. Item 5, the schoolhouse at Chapelton, Arbroath.
Thank you, Convener. Again, I can confirm I've had no previous involvement in the application, and I have had no conflict of interest relative to the case, applicant, or any interested party. The case in front of members of the DMRC seeks review of Condition 2 and Condition 3 of Planning Permission 23/00166/FULL for the change of use of land for the erection of a shed for a gift shop takeaway and ancillary works, retrospective, at Schoolhouse, Chapelton, Arbroath. This permission was granted on the 16th of September 2023. Condition 2 related to the restriction and sale of hot food from the premises and immediate surrounding area. Condition 3 limited uses on the site to Class 1A as per the Town and Country Planning Act, Use Classes Scotland Order 1997 as amended. The shed is located within the curtilage of the former schoolhouse and lies to the west of the dwelling house at the southwest corner of the plot. It is understood that the development was built and commenced operation in August 2021. The building measures around 2.3 metres in height, 2.4 metres in length and 3 metres in width. The roof is finished in black roofing felt and the walls and doors are finished in timber.
Mr. Christensen, you've gone on to mute.
Oh, apologies about that. The site plan is in front of you. It shows the application site marked outlined in red. And in the bottom left-hand corner is the shed for the proposed or the shop and takeaway. Next slide shows the location plan. Again, it shows the application site marked in red. In the bottom left-hand corner is the location of the shed. And just to note out the neighbouring properties close by, Rose Cottage, located immediately to the west of the application site, and New House is located to the southwest. Another property is located immediately to the south. Public road runs just immediately to the south of the site as well. Looking at the east elevation, this is a photograph submitted by the applicant as part of the application. It shows the east elevation. This is standing within the schoolhouse grounds, and it actually shows the size and the scale of the shed that we're discussing this morning. The south elevation, this is from the public road. Again, it shows the shed. Just beyond the shed, we can see the boundary and a shed within the property of the adjacent property at Rose Cottage. Again, standing just further back from the last slide, again we can see the location of the shed on the right-hand side here. Schoolhouse is just immediately beyond that. In front of us, directly in front of us, is the boundary between Rose Cottage and Schoolhouse, and you can see the Rose Cottage and its curtilage, including a shed within their property on the left-hand side. And finally, the slides showing again the location of the shed in relative position to the schoolhouse, the public road just in front. This is obviously the access into schoolhouse and where the is in operation.
Okay, thanks, Christensen. You might have frozen again. I don't know. Well, oh no, that's fine. You're moving now. That's good. Okay, I just thought we'd lost contact again. Okay, are there any questions specifically for Mr. Christensen on the planning side? Again, I'm conscious we've got Mr. Petrie on the call to deal with any environmental health queries. I'm not seeing any. There is one from me, Mr. Christensen. The conditions were condition 2 and 3, and condition 2 is no hot food. Condition 3 is class 1A only. What exactly does class 1A only mean? Because it seemed to be like that was class 1A says means you can't do hot food. Is there anything else covered or restricted by class 1A, just for curiosity?
Thanks, convener. Class 1A really relates to the shop and similar sort of uses to shops. So that would include things like hairdressers, travel ticket agencies, post offices, cold food shops. Hot food is under sui generis as a sui generis use. I think it's worth pointing out to members the restriction to hot food. Obviously, within the use classes orders, there's permitted uses that could be permitted without the benefit of planning plan permission with hot food and so certain uses. So I think that is the reason why the planning authority had put that condition on.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that point. Okay, no questions for Mr. Christensen? Okay, conscious that we've got, are there any other questions for other officers now from elected members? Perhaps I could maybe ask Mr. Petrie again to give us his views on this particular application. That would be helpful, I think. He was also on the site visit this week.
Thank you, Convener. As we discussed on the site visit, they would need odour abatement equipment discharge. The sort of odour abatement equipment isn't particularly cheap. It would be expensive, and it can be a little bit space consuming generally. So in a practical sense, there may be nowhere to put this equipment. However, that's not to say it couldn't be done, but they would need to have the same level of sort of equipment as a takeaway, perhaps in the centre of Arbroath.
And your concern would be the close vicinity of a number of private houses?
Both the proximity and the low-level discharge of the cooking odours, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Have elected members got enough information now to proceed to determine the appeal? I think I'm seeing nods of heads. Okay. Okay, well, I'll start with you this time, Councillor Dorn. If you could give us your views, and then that leaves two of us in the chamber.
That's fine, thank you. Yeah, I mean, it sounds like a well-loved small business with excellent cakes and coffee, given the comments that have been received on the application. But we're being asked to discuss like the conditions that have been introduced on the approval of the planning application. And I think for me, without sufficient detail about odour mitigation or odour abatement or how that would happen with any hot food served, for me, the conditions that have been posed are acceptable. I don't think it would be acceptable for us to approve hot food without any of those conditions attached, because we would expect those to be attached if they are a hot food takeaway near other residential properties. The site visit was really valuable. It showed us actually where the location is, like in reality, to other houses and potential development. So I agree with the conditions that have been put on this application. Thanks.
To clarify, you are upholding the existing conditions. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Brays.
Yes, thanks, Convener. I don't have any problem with the business operating where it is, but there have to be conditions on it to stop the nuisance of smell, reducing the amenity for neighbours. So I think we do have to have conditions on it, and so I would uphold the refusal. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Brays. Yes, I mean, again, I would say that I found the site visit this week very helpful. It's, I guess, like the previous one, it is one of those that is, it's not a high level of nuisance, but I think there is a potential for nuisance, and I think if this was a domestic arrangement, then there's nothing we could do about it. But this is someone who wants to run a business, and I think if you want to run a business, there are certain standards you need to reach to protect your neighbours, and I think that's the thing that environmental health picked up. Clearly, as Mr. Petrie has said, there are ways to get round that problem for the applicant, but that we've got to look at the application in front of us, and the application in front of us doesn't have any abatement equipment. And I think if that would need to be looked at by the applicant in consultation with our planning advisors, etc. But I think as things stand, I'm happy that we accept the initial conditions put in by planning, and therefore, for that reason, I would reject the appeal to delete those conditions. I think environmental health and planning have got this correct.
Are members agreeable to that?
Are members agreeable to that? Yep. Okay.
Agreed.
We're getting okay. Thank you. And we can perhaps invite Councillor Durno back in again. Okay, thanks to Councillor Durden, who is now back in the meeting. We'll move on to item 6, which is 1 Brokey Cottage, Moniki, and again I'll hand over to Mr Christensen to take us through the planning presentation.
Thank you again, Convener. I can confirm again that I've had no previous involvement in the application and that I have no conflict of interest relative to the case, applicant, or any interested party. The case in front of members of Dmrc seeks review of the non-determination of an application for planning permission in principle for the erection of a dwelling house at 1 Brokey Cottages, Moniki. The application site measures approximately 950 square metres and forms part of the extended garden area associated with 1 Brokey Cottage. An outbuilding for the existing cottage is located in the northeastern corner of the site. The site lies out with the Craigton of Moniki development boundary as identified in the Angus Local Development Plan 2016 and is bound on its northern and eastern sides by a stone wall with garden ground for 1 Brokey Cottage beyond. A stone wall is the boundary on the western side with Moniki Country Park and Reservoir beyond. On the southern boundary of the site is again bound by a stone wall with trees, mature trees beyond that. The indicative site plan shows that access to the site would be shared with the current access for 1 Brokey Cottage from the B961 public road, with a breach made into the boundary wall on the eastern side for access to the new property.
Mr Christensen, your mic's gone again.
I don't know why that's happening. Sorry, I think it must be when I'm pressing the slides. We can see the location for the application site is marked in red. We can see its position in relation to the Moniki Country Park and Reservoir, with the B961 road just to the south. Again, a closer location point, the application site marked in red, and again you can see its position in relation to Moniki Country Park and Reservoir, and the footpath which runs around Moniki Country Park. And we can see existing cottages, number 1 and number 2 Brokey Cottages. The B961 running immediately to the south. And beyond that, members can see there's a new development at it's called at Rowan Bank. This committee approved that development in 2022. The Craigton of Moniki development boundary is marked in front of you. It shows it in black, and therefore it shows that the application site, which is here where my cursor is, it lies out with, but adjacent to the existing development boundary of the Angus Local Development Plan 2016. Another location plan zoomed in a little bit more better. It shows the application site marked in red. You can see from the site plan, you can see that this forms part of the garden ground for 1 Brokey Cottage, which is here where the cursor is, and obviously adjacent to that is number 2 Brokey Cottage. Immediately to the east, to the west is Moniki Country Park and Reservoir. An indicative site plan. This shows the relative position of where the house would be, the dwelling. It shows the access, which is currently also the access for 1 Brokey Cottage from the B961. And you can see here there would be a breach made into which is the existing boundary wall on the eastern side of Brokey Cottage with this larger garden area, which we'll see shortly in the photographs. A larger breach made into the wall to allow for access and obviously for the dwelling itself. This the existing garage already is retained in there, and that's shown in this plan. Trees are located immediately to the south. This picture is taken just on the B961. It shows the position of Brockie cottages as existing. Immediately to the west is one Brockie cottage, and immediately in our foreground is number 2 Brockie cottage. We can see the southern boundary of the application site with these mature trees. This image shows the existing access to one Brockie cottage from the B961. This will also be the access used for the new dwelling house. And this shows the southern boundary of Brockie cottages just beyond that to the north. This is a view of the application site looking east. This picture is taken from within Miniki Country Park itself, the footpath that runs down the edge. The application site is shown just where my cursor is here. It's just this area of land within the existing stone wall area. You can see there's a little footpath access currently between the garden ground into this extended garden ground area. And this is the relative position of where the access would be formed into the new property, which would be located in the foreground here. It's also worth highlighting as well that clearly there's obviously defined stone walls, but it's also worth highlighting that where this picture is taken is obviously significantly raised. It's in Miniki Country Park, so there's obviously it's significantly higher than the application site, which sits lower down below. Again, a closer zoomed in image of the application site shows the area as garden ground as part of Brockie cottages, and again it highlights again just the raised nature of the footpath, the public footpath within Country Park relative to the application site, which sits further below. Looking southeast from within the country park, again, it shows the image of the existing Brockie cottage and its garden ground. It shows this extended garden ground area which forms the application site. It shows the mature trees to the south, immediately to the south of the application site, and the existing stone walls which would form the boundaries of the proposed dwelling. That concludes the presentation, members. The notice of review and appeal papers are in front of you. There's also obviously correspondence between the applicant and the planning service is also in front of you, as well as any consultation responses. Just worth highlighting to members, there is no report of handling with this case because it's a non-determination case, and obviously the report of handling hasn't been prepared at this stage. Thank you. Sorry, Convener, there was just one last thing. I was also going to just point out that in this case, the main policy considerations for members would be policies DS1 in the Angus Local Development Plan, policy TC2 of the Angus Local Development Plan relative to the countryside housing aspect of that, the countryside housing supplementary planning guidance associated with the Angus Local Development Plan, policy DS4 amenity, and that's on the basis of the response from the council's access officer in relation to the raised nature of Miniki Country Park and with the adjacent application site lower
Okay, thanks, Mr. Christensen.
Apologies, I lost you there. Sorry. Policy DS4 in terms of amenity, that's following the council's access officer's comments in relation to the application where the Miniki Country Park sits above the application site. In terms of National Planning Framework 4, the main policy consideration of that would be policy 17, which relates to rural homes. Hopefully this is helpful, Convener and members. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much indeed, Mr. Christensen. I see that Councillor Durno has got her hand up, so over to you, Councillor Christensen.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Christensen. Obviously, this is just a plan site at the moment. Will the actual plans of the building itself, as in the appearance, the size, whatever, will that all come to development standards, or will that go straight to delegated powers, or on, you know, we won't have a look at it after?
Yeah, I
Depends
think,
on what the objection to some, depends on that.
yeah, obviously there's the scheme of delegation, as I understand, that would, you know, that would determine how the application would, any future application would be determined. Obviously, if members were minded to approve the application today, there would be a requirement for a further application which would set out the detailed design layout of the property. But as I said, it would be dependent on what came forward in terms of number of objections, etc., which would determine how that would be ultimately determined either at development standards or as a delegated matter. But obviously, in front of you today is considering whether the planning permission in principle is acceptable.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks for that question. Any other questions, Christensen or any other officers? I don't see any questions now. Given that this is a non-determination, I'm going to ask elected members if they have enough information at this point to determine the application. Councillor Brays.
Yes, thanks, Convener. I think on this occasion I would really be asking for a site visit.
Okay, Councillor Brays is indicating that he would like a site visit. Councillor Dorn, I see you've got your hand up.
I'm happy to support that, because I think if anyone would want to have a site visit, I think it's important that we do that in order to make the decision. And I think in this one, in the location of it, I agree. I think it would be good to go and visit the site.
Yeah, well, I'll put my pennies worth in as well. I completely agree with Councillors Brays and Dorn. I think a site visit really will be needed here, and I would certainly benefit from that. So we will ask officers to arrange an unaccompanied site visit at a date to be advised, and we can then go and have a look at it and then come back and make a determination. Councillor Brays.
Thanks, Convener. One of the reasons for me wanting a site visit was because of our countryside officers' comments, and they referred to basically what the site looks like from the path, and I would really need to be able to get up on that path to see what our countryside officers seen. Is that going to be easy or possible? Or, I'm saying I would need to, but if it's not possible, then...
Well, it's a public footpath, so I would have thought it's very possible.
It could be quite lengthy.
You might have to climb up a bit, but well, I think that's possible.
Anyway, that was my comment.
I think we're agreed. I know we haven't asked your opinion, Councillor Durno, but three of us want a site visit, so I think that's the situation. So we'll have a site visit unaccompanied at a date to be determined. And at that point, maybe close the meeting. Thanks very much for your attendance and have a good day.
Thanks, Convener.
Enjoy your haggis.